Good morning. New day. Coffee. So we typed up the guitar yesterday. We're going to look at the frets today. This guitar is 39 and a half years old. So there is some visible divots in the frets. And the 13th fret has a little bit of tarnish on it. So we know exactly what we have to do. Let's just get into it and do it. Back to the bench. So the first thing we're going to check is how level are the frets. And so that we get out our straight flat edge, put it across at least 3 frets and try and rock it. And these are flat. Oh, maybe a little bit there, not enough to worry about. But let's take our edging. Was it this one? And just at the far side, we're going to get our grooved file and these frets are fairly low. They might have had a dressing already. So we might have to resort to the other file, which is our edging file. And I'm just gonna using my finger as a guide. I'm just trying to catch the last little bit of the fret and voila. Once you get up so far in the fretboard, you're going to have to turn it this way because the other side's too long and that one needs a little bit at the far edge. That was a little better. Just do a 1-2 swipes and check it again. Now remember, the frets are curved this way across the radius of the neck, so when you're taking swipes across there, remember that and roll the file. Okay. As I roll, I go down off the edge. A little bit in the middle can still happen, but that one's fairly flat too now. So if you can hear the tip tapping, that one needs it. And I just ripped the tape right off the fretboard. So I got to be a little more careful there. Not to drag the file across the fretboard. Now once we try and reflatten these ones up here, we might be messing with this level stuff. So we just want to know that we're starting with the flat. Okay, I'm stopping there because I don't finger up in here. No need to do it if you don't have to. So this 13th one that had that tarnish on it. We're going to have to put a little welly in that one, so we're going to stand up and get a better angle at this. Wow, one swipe took most of the surface stuff off. Okay. Drink. Oh, ice cold coffee. That's how you know you're having fun. Okay, let's get a close up on these here ones with the rivets in it, divots in it, and first off, let's just resurface them before we do anything and see how much filing really has to be done. So let's take a couple of swipes across, just light ones. We're just trying to get the main top off of there. You know what we need? Our headache glasses. For some reason these things always have dust all over them. Maybe because I only ever use them when I'm filing. Okay. Headache glasses away. Yeah, you can still see a bit of the divots. Let's, as I say, let's just get the tarnish off the top first. These are mainly in the first 3 to 4 frets, of course. Might have to re-tape this before I do the polishing. Okay, now what we're going to do is take our little one, get it on an edge, and try and basically slowly, slightly file where the grooves are. Finger is a guide, and cautious. We'll do this side. If you can't see them, that's a good thing. So we're going to do this all the way along, and then we'll come back and see how the levelness is. So now we have all the divots pretty much removed. There's a slight showing of them, but it's by no means worth going any farther with them, because we've gone along now again and they are all flat right across the board. So the next thing we're going to do is the ends of the frets are cut on an angle, but there is just a slightest sharp edge on the sides of those cuts. So the next thing we do is take our small file and go over those edges and just kind of round them out so that they aren't quite so sharp. Just round those edges out a bit, like so. Just, I'm doing it backwards because I'm on the other side, but pulling towards me, but I'm just kind of rounding out that slight edge on the ends of the frets, and that's so that when you slide up and down you don't hit that sharp edge. And we're just going to continue that for all the rest of them. Use your finger as a guide on top of having the, this is why we tape this off. Now, I might have to retape some of the spots before we do the final polishing because the grooved file pulled up the tape in a few spots, but just take your time about it. Make sure you finish off. You got no sharp edges. And keep going till you're done. Okay, drink. Switched out my cold coffee for hot chocolate. So now we've got the frets fairly clean, fairly level. They're flat this way, but we still have to polish them. So for a little bit added protection, I'm going to take a business card, not paid promotion, and I'm going to take a knife and slice a little slot out of the one side that is the exact same size as one of our frets, or a little bit longer. So we want a slot in the card that is about 46 millimeters by 2.5. Be precise. So we want this slot to go just a little bit to the one side of the card because of the narrowness of the card itself, the frets, the ones we're going to do. So about 46 millimeters, about 2.5 millimeters wide. And cut that out. So now it's time to polish the frets. Now this is grade 4/0 steel wool, or 0000 steel wool. It's the softest steel wool that you can get, and that works really good for polishing these frets. A lot of people use other things. I have a lot of 4/0 steel wool. So if your guitar has any electronics in it at all, now is your chance to go back and tape them off. If I'm doing my electric guitars, I usually take the neck off before I do this, because this is going to make a lot of small metal shards. Pickups are magnets. Electronics and steel shards do not mix very well. So all my electronic guitars are way out of the way. As I say, if it's an electric guitar, I usually remove the neck if I can. But if you have an acoustic with electronics in it, tape them off. Do whatever you have to keep it from getting any of this in it. So we've got it taped off. We're going to take their little template, go around so that just the fret is showing, and go over it for about 15-20 seconds, and then take a look at it. You'll be able to tell fairly quickly any impurities in it. Looks nice. Now there are still a little bit of divots in these here. I didn't go way too far. I just got them so that they were so small that you could just barely see them. So with the fretboard being taped off, that's a fair good protection, but as you saw, we did the little bit of ruining of the tape job, so this is why we get this little template. You can buy these made of metal, and I'm planning on getting one, but at this point, this will do. That'll do, pig, that'll do. So, do this 20 some odd more times. You will also notice that I removed the blanket from the top of the bench because we don't want to get any of these steel shards in it either. You'll see what kind of a mess we make by the time we're done doing this. And this is why we taped everything off. Simple magnet on the back of my screwdriver. Yeah, that's all magnetic shards. So that's why you don't want any of this stuff near your pickups, any electronics, and any of your guitars. And they get everywhere. That's why I take the blanket off of the bench. And that's not all. I'm going to get more than that. I can empty this and get it but that much again easily. So any of these coverings that we used for our stands or that all have to be washed or thrown away if that's the case. If it's easier just to throw it away, then just throw it away. But we want to make sure that that's why I took the blanket off. There's a little piece of contact back at the far end. None of the back of the guitar is sitting on that there. And clean up. And now the reason that we put those two strips along the sides of the neck before we crossed over any of them. You take this off, and it's a lot easier to remove the tape because it all comes in fairly well one set. Did I get a glue mark or did I slice across there? I hope I didn't. Guess we'll find out. All the tape comes off. And then we will wipe it down with the dry cloth. Make sure we got all this carefully, of course, to make sure that we got all the shards off. And then we will just get it set up and ready for the next step, whatever that is. I wonder what that is. So I noticed a couple of the inlays we were sticking up a little bit almost. So what I've done is took my knife, put it gently sideways, and if you come to a spot where it's grabbing, just try and gently smoothen out the top edge. Never had that before, but be careful, you don't want to mark up the fretboard, of course. And now for the most controversial part of this video. I just happen to have a left-handed nut. Yes, I'm going to convert this into a left-handed guitar. The saddle and bridge is going to be an issue in the long run because it is angled in the wrong direction for good intonation. So ideally that slot in the bridge would go in the other direction. We can work around that for a while, but we want to remove this nut. Now when you're going to remove a nut, we want to take a sharp edge and put just a little bit of a crease right in the very edge there. That is so that when we pop this off of there, we don't take any of the finish with us. There's a border line there. So we want to very, very carefully make sure we get right into the groove and make sure there is a degree of separation. You don't want to make a big mess or a big mark. You just want to score that more than anything. Now we're going to take a sharp edge Put it right up against there and tap this with a piece of wood and see if we can pop that off. And it was glued on there, so we're going to want to try and flatten that out a bit. We'll probably use one of our files just to make sure we've got a nice solid flat edge. And this nut will fit perfectly in there and give us left hand orientation. This of course will stay around because if I ever do sell this guitar, the person can have a right-handed guitar like it's supposed to be. So let's get our file and make sure that groove is flat. So I'm just going to use my fret file because it's here handy, but all we really want to do, we don't want to change the surface at all. We just want to make sure that there's nothing sticking up. So that's all we really want to do. And now we've got two choices. We can either glue this in there, or we can just use the pressure of the strings. And I think we will just maybe use the pressure of the strings. Let's check these two against the height of each other. The one I have is much lower by about 1/2 millimeter. So that is going to be an issue. That will mean that once we get this on there, it's going to be too low. So we are going to need a shim, something in there about the thickness of a business card. But we'd want it to be a little more solid. Of course, it's going to pinch down pretty tight with the pressure of the strings, so we might be able to just do that with a thickness of a business card. Let's take a good close look at this. That's what we're going to do. Might take a couple times to find something that's just the perfect height, but we can do this. So I toyed with taking a little piece of tin foil and folding it over and over until I got the proper thickness. And then I thought, that's just a little too red green. So we're going to take a little dab of super glue. Don't need much. And then we are going to take our nut dust that we saved from making nuts and saddles and stuff. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit across that line. And then I'm going to take this nut and just mix it up a bit. And then once that dries, we will just sand off whatever's not. Ta-da! Now we could have just put a bead of the glue down in here, dump some of that powder on top and set it on. But if that goes wrong, that goes really wrong. So I would rather glue the bottom of the nut and sand it flat to meet whatever is here. So what I was saying there was, while we wait for the glue to dry, there are some marks on this. There's a couple of marks on the back of the neck. This one has a bit of feel. This one doesn't affect anything. You can feel this one a little bit. And this one you can hardly feel at all. You can barely see this here mark here, which I figure was from a dress shirt because I know the gentleman played professionally. And a couple of belt buckle marks on the back. So now we've waited the mandatory 30 seconds for the crazy glue to dry. We pull this off and nope, did not work. Not like what we want it to. So we try again. May as well find out now, eh? So this time we're not going to mess around. We are going to leave a great big wide gap of crazy glue. That wide. Make sure that we get full coverage. And cover that over. With all kinds. Now, that might be all too much, but let's see. Let's take that little piece of card and make sure we get jammed in good, solid. See, there's a spot I could have missed. We can always file off what is not. And then we dance. So in this 30 seconds, we're going to take a look inside the guitar to see what it was like in there. So that back in the one corner, there was the number there, 070732, whatever that means. Yeah, 23. And then I got looking at the block in the back of at the base. And I got looking at the beveling of the base, and it seemed like it was almost 2 layers because the closer layers to the back wall seem to have a different molecular structure. And so for this to really be a left-handed guitar, we would have to have the bridge in this direction instead of that direction. And if there was a way I could get a double saddle, it'd be pretty tough to do, and I don't want to mess with this guitar. It's beautiful and it's okay, so I don't have to have it that way. We'll work with the intonation. I don't play a lot up in this here end. Actually, there is a couple of spots I do harmonies at the 12th. I might have to just change my fingering a bit, and there will be a sweet spot. But that's that. Now, you think we wait long enough for that glue? And so let's remove the excess nut dust and save it, because, well, we can. What will I use to do that? Gandhi. So now we take our new one. I'm wondering if maybe, yeah, that didn't work at all because the glue stuck to the wax paper. So let's go the full red green. Get rid of this stuff. over about 7 times, and you got the same thickness as what we need. So all I'm doing is just folding over a 1/4 inch strap and folding it like we were making a fan when like in grade 2 or 3. But this will do the trick. Once we get it half as thick, we're going to cut it and then fold it over end on end and put it between here and the nut. Yes, I know. Red, green. So now, when I line these up against each other, put the short one on this little metal shard and the other one, which still has the wood in it, put them up side by side with one being on and one not, and that is about as perfect as it could possibly be. So what I'm going to do is just cut this right there and put it in there, and then this will hold it in perfectly and be the right height. Didn't hear an effing thing, did you? What I just said was take 2. So what we're going to do is take the new one, which is too low, put it right on top of that piece of tin foil, line it up against the other one, which still has a bit of the wood on the bottom, which took up the space, so we didn't mess with the surface. It will be the same. Slide these two together and they are the perfect height. So that is what we're going to do. Cut that there, slide it into carefully rethink this. It's got to be a little bit narrower, but it can be done. Away we go. So now we've redone it to a narrower parameter and it fits in there perfect. Now we just cut it off, put the left-handed nut on top, and just do the pressure fit for first, because that way if it's too high then we can go in and take some of this off. If it's too low, blah blah blah, other way. Yes, let's go. So we've done it. We've made ourselves a little shim. When you put it on the bottom of the shorter of the two, they are. So I also cut it a little bit shorter than the nut so that it's concealed fairly well. If not, then we can redo it fully integrated. So let's put the nut on there, push it down, and the only way we're going to find out is if we string it up, and if it's too high then we take it out, take a couple of sleeves off until we find the desired height. Wait to the strings. I will spare you all watching me restring a guitar. I'm pretty sure you know how to do that, so. Damn it. Look what I just did. Good thing I have extra strings around here. Measure twice, cut once. Ugh. And when stringing up any guitar with a floating nut that does not be glued in, is removable, always make sure you get all the strings on just up to a slight taunt, because you're going to have to adjust that nut back and forth, side to side, before you tighten down all these strings. So we brought it up to tune and we're getting a little buzzing off of the fatty. What the? Guess what, guys? I cut 2 of them too short. So we wired her up and we got really way too low action on the high strings and way too high on the low strings. So we're going to do the capo nut trick. Okay, nut's fine. It's okay. So our problem is with the saddle. Now I did notice that saddle had been shaved really low. I have another saddle that's also shaved very low, but maybe not as low. So as low. So we're going to take that one out, compare the two, and see which one would be best. If the worst comes to worst, we're going to have to put a shim in underneath that just to bring it up a bit. The neck is fairly flat. We might also loosen the truss rod. Maybe we should do that first. Loosen the truss rod a quarter. No, because it's out of kilter anyways. So we're going to have to do some other sort of adjustment. We'll take a look and see if we have to do any truss rod adjustment while we're doing it. And the truss rod can use an adjustment. Let's do that first, and then we'll see if we have to mess with the saddle. So we're going to want to loosen this. So we take our 6-sided L-shaped adjustment tool, put it in the 6-sided L-shaped adjustment tool receptacle, and loosen it probably about a quarter turn or so. We don't want to do too much because we're going to be adjusting it with the saddle again anyways. But yes, that looks kind of the same. So we'll just give it the slightest bit more, just to make sure we made an adjustment. Now let's loosen off the strings farther so that we can get the saddle out. So when we compare the two saddles, the old one is bigger. We're going to use this one, and it is a little larger down by the larger strings, which is okay. Now it is compensated, which is going to work against us, but for a little height, and hopefully the truss rod helps, we should be in a good spot. It's also curved a bit, so I'm hoping that it brings up these larger strings and higher than it does the other ones. And then maybe we'll have to do another truss rod adjustment to fine tune it in. So we wired her all up again, and it was way too high this time. So this has to come down, and we can take a little bit more off of the skinny strings than the fat ones. All we do is we put a line on here on the general angle and a little shy of what we really want, and then can't you hear me? Then we have an idea of where we want to sand off. We got a line there that's a little bit on an angle. We're just going to sand that off, of course a little bit more at this end, or get it to about halfway off, and then we'll put it back in and see how well that worked. We want to bring down about, it was at 3, and we want it down about 1.75 millimeters. So we wanted to drop it 1.25 millimeters, which means we have to double that up. So we want to take 1.5 millimeters off of here to get about one, a little less than 1 at the 12th. Remember to put a mark on the opposite side every time in the same rough area, but you'll never get it in the exact same spot, so you'll have 2 chances of measuring how much has to come off yet. This one seems a little shorter than the other one. We'll see when we start going, because you're going to go so long, and then we're going to take a look and see where we sit. Oh yeah, save your nut dust. So we put it back in, and we were still reading about 3. But we were more level across the board. So we've got the angle part sanded off. Now we just have to bring it down. It's at 3. We want 1.75. 1.75 and 1.25 is 3. So we want half of 1.25. So we want to take off about 3/4 of a millimeter yet. And when we're just eyeballing it, that's going to mean that I want to get rid of almost all of this here line. But at least now we know that we're flat. And we're homing in on it. Yeah, sanding. And then once you've got it down to just about the right height, start concentrating more on keeping the bottom flat. Just by feeling it, I can tell that I've been favoring one side. So I want to favor the long side to do the fine tuning into a nice flat bottom so it has good contact with the soundboard inside the bridge. I noticed that the grooves in my Godins are deeper than the grooves in the Yamaha. And that's because I had this one sanded down really low for the Seagull, and it was just perfect actually, but this, it's way too high. So let's put her back together again and see where we sit. First off, let's compare it to the old one. Looks like the larger strings are still going to be a bit high. Looks like they're all going to be a bit high, but as I say, we got to home in on it slowly. You can always take more off, can't always put more on. So let's put it back together. So there it is, 1986 FG445 with transgender for everybody. It's been switched to a left-hander, so it can be switched back fairly easily, but us left-handers never really got these special guitars. And this one's special being the tobacco burst, which is beautiful. I don't mind the pickguard being up there because I just free finger style. I don't strum, so I'm not gonna mess that up. And she's been all cleaned up and ready for at least a few months of me playing it, and then if we have to, we'll switch it out. The saddle is like really low, and the neck is about as flat as it can be, and we're sitting at about 2 mils right across the board. High for my likings, but hey, what am I gonna do? Anyways, thanks for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Tell me what I did wrong. I know I do things wrong. I'm not a luthier, just an old guy with too much time on my hands. And maybe that's why I burst 2 strings. Well, I didn't break them, I cut them in the wrong spot. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Bye now. Only one thing left to do, and that's introduce her to her siblings. And so there we have the Yamaha family. On the far left is my original FG420L, bought brand new in 1985. Second one from the left is another FG420L that I picked up last year, and it also has the passive pickup in it. Of course, we know the FG445 in the middle, which has been converted to left-handed for now. It can be switched back to right-handed. And then there was the FG440-12 that is right-handed and is staying right-handed. And then on the far right is my FG720SL, which I just picked up because it's a nice sounding guitar. So, thanks for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Which one do you like? Bye now.